10 years ago, having one stable paycheck felt safe. In 2026, it may be one of the biggest financial risks you can take. Because the truth is, most families are one job loss away, one health issue away, one divorce, or one economic shift away from financial panic. Because the truth is, most families are one job loss, one health issue, one divorce, or one economic shift away from financial panic. I think we're all seeing it right now. The gas is almost like $4 now. Granted, it'll probably be short lived, but when our economy goes up and down, how prepared are we for that? And what really scares me the most is that most people are really struggling. And it's just so many people know that they're vulnerable, but they still aren't building a second income system. So right now, layoffs are happening across multiple industries. AI, if you're not keeping up, is replacing jobs faster than most people expected. Inflation is still squeezing households, and millions of Americans are quietly realizing their paycheck no longer creates their security. So then the question becomes, what happens if your income stops, but your bills don't? I know if I have a job change or job loss, my mortgage payment or my rent payment is still going to be happening. So in this video, I want to show you why one rental property can completely change the direction of your financial future, especially for women trying to create stability before life forces them to. So let's get going and see what I'm talking about. I talk a lot about paycheck dependency, but what I really want to focus on today is if your household only has one income source, one stream of income, and if that one income, and that could be retirement, that could be Social Security, that could be your job, that could be death benefits. I mean, wherever your source of income, if you only have one, then that's why I wanted to make this video. Because for me, I get scared when I think about, oh my gosh, what if that one source of income goes away? I've been an entrepreneur for over 20 years. And one of the reasons I became an entrepreneur many years ago was because I wanted to be more in control of my income. I didn't want a boss saying, oh, you get a 2% raise, or, we're having layoffs, or you don't get a raise at all. So Americans are quietly losing confidence in having that one paycheck. So, for example, my husband's in the tech industry. So we talk about some ups and downs over the last 20 years. I think the place that he's at right now is the longest that he's ever been. And that's maybe 6 years, because in tech, I mean, it just goes all over the place, but he's really had to keep up his skills. So when you look at the numbers, it's scary, right? It's very scary of how many households are dependent on that one paycheck. And then you factor in somebody passing away or getting a divorce, or, having health issues that impact, where is our income going to come from? So, and the fear is just not about losing money, right? I mean, we're talking about, emotionally kinds of things. Think of the stress. If you are a household that has ever lost jobs, I've been through that with my husband being in tech. That's what happened. That's what kind of forced me into having my own business. I also was divorced before I met my current husband. And so I went through a time period where I was like, I was very fortunate that I had a job that I could continue my lifestyle. But a lot of times, what happens with women is we don't have that luxury, right? I think that the statistic is very high. Like when a married person, because sometimes the woman stays home to raise the children, and then, years later they might get a divorce. So her skills are rusty, maybe depending on how the job market is at the time. So sometimes women have a harder time recovering financially from a divorce. And so, you have to kind of think about not that I'm a doomsayer, but we have to be realistic about things happen in our lives that force transitions. And so one of the things that my daughter and I focus on is working with women to transition into real estate investing, whether you're working a full-time job, whether you're a stay-at-home mom, but you don't have to spend hours and hours doing it, but you do need to sort of take action if you want to change. It's all about the one income stream and what would happen to your lifestyle and where you're at financially if that went away. Now, who am I and why am I talking about this? Well, my name is Nancy Wallace-Laabs, and I've been a real estate investor for almost 20 years now. The reason that I do what I do is because I personally went through transitions. I was a single mom with a small child. It was very stressful. And then what if that job went away? Because I was stressed out about getting a divorce, then I started not having great performances at work. I was a manager, and so my bosses weren't very open when you have daycare issues or when your child is sick. So I did go through a period of time where I was like, what happens if I get fired? And so I had to start thinking about the security, the financial security for me and my daughter. So that's my backstory, right, of how I became here in front of you. If you're someone who's thinking about, oh my gosh, what if that should happen to me? Reach out, give me a call. When that's what we talk about. We talk about, how can you transition into real estate investing? So you can call me at 469-430-9885. And I also have all my contact info in the description below. So let's talk about how women are becoming a major force in real estate investing. Single women own 58% of homes held by unmarried Americans. And now women make up roughly 60 to 66% of all realtors, but not necessarily taking advantage of buying rental properties. We might be in real estate and we're helping other people build their wealth, but we're not really focusing on ours. Women are not behind because they're incapable, quite the contrary. When women decide to invest, 50% of them do better than their male counterparts when it comes to investing. And so women are very successful as real estate investors. Where women kind of don't succeed that well, or where they kind of fall behind is they don't make time, because we are always about helping our families and helping, our children and helping our parents and helping our friends. Sometimes don't take the steps necessary to secure our own financial future. Now, I talk a lot about how one property can change that direction. And whether you're doing it as a married couple, whether you're doing it as a single person, it doesn't really matter. That one rental property will change your mind shift towards how you can build and become less dependent on one income stream. And you'll look at how you can take advantage of the job that you have right now and transition into real estate investing, which then the actions that you take today are really for your future tomorrow. Now, a lot of people think they need massive wealth to get started. Now, I'm not going to lie to you. You need some money, but because you already have one income stream, that actually might be a benefit to you transitioning into building a second income stream. I don't teach people how to buy investment properties with zero money. I always have to have money. You need money for inspections. You need money for closing costs. Are there creative ways? Yes, they are. But if you have a job right now, you don't really have to spend time learning those creative ways, because you can leverage your current income stream. Let me just give you an example to illustrate it. So I bought up my first rental property back in 2026. It's 20 years later. And that rental property I purchased back in 2006, I paid $115,000 for it. I held the property for 11 years and I had the same tenant. And I sold that property 11 years later for over $350,000. Had I not taken the initiative back in 2006, I don't know of any CD or market that could have paid me that much money. And in the 11 years I had the same tenant, they paid the mortgage down. I had a mortgage for about $100,000, and that tenant paid rent. They paid rent for $1,000 a month at least. I'm just going to round it up. So that was $12,000 a year. They were there for 11 years. So 10 years is $120,000 that tenant paid me. Now that's all behind the scenes, right? That's like, I just got the rent every month. But now looking back, you can see how that invisible wall of wealth was just always right behind me. And if I only kept that one rental property, I still would be better off today than I was 20 years ago. So that's kind of the invisible wall that I want to share with you, that how real estate investing over time is what gives you the financial security, is what gives you, is one rental property going to let you quit your job? No. Is one rental property going to, make you super wealthy? No. But can you leverage the wealth, the income that you get to create more wealth? So it's a transformation. That's really what we're talking about. I talk about transition, but transformation. So what changes when you start? Well, you can see that one property starts the chain reaction. So there's three things that I talk about. One is property appreciation. So just like the example I gave, the property over 15 years, appreciated in value. I mean, almost tripled in value, right, over the last 20 years. Number two, I was able to leverage equity because that tenant was paying down my mortgage payment. And then three, I had cash flow. So those are the numbers that we talk about. They're not all the numbers, but that's the number that starts the transition. Those are the numbers that start that mind shift of, oh, I can have more than one source of income. I don't have to rely on my employer to give me a raise. I don't have to rely on the economy. I can take control. Now you might be asking it yourself, okay, well, Nancy, I get it. Okay, I don't want to be dependent on just one source of income, but how can you help me? Well, here's what we do. We have what we call the one property with real momentum. Schedule a call. And then in the first 1 to 3 months, talk about, identifying your market and, understanding your numbers. In month 3 to 6 is when you really zero in and finding the right property. It really is dependent on what kind of actions you're going to take. And then month 6, you've got the property under contract, you've closed, and now you're starting your cash flow. So in less than 12 months, you could be starting where you're transitioning your one source of income into two. It doesn't take tons of money. It does take some money. It takes action. It takes a mind shift, and it takes you saying, hey, Nancy, this is what I want to do. Now let's talk about taking actions. So the actions you take today are really what builds your future for tomorrow. That's really what we're talking about. So if you stay still, you can see by this graph, if you stay still, you're not going to create that second source of income. If you are someone who wants to stay dependent on the economy, on your employer, then you're not going to take action. You might be saying, "Oh, I love my job," and I loved my job too, but I wanted to transition into something that was best for my daughter and myself. And that's what happens when you start transitioning as opposed to starting now. So the longer time goes by, the more opportunity that you're going to lose out. And so that's what this graph is kind of displaying, is that, you have to make a decision to take action. No one can do it for you. So when we talk about transition, it's a real strategy. There's some thought that goes behind it. It's about, finding the right property, working with the right person. It's finding the financing. And that's what we do here at Money Making Mamas, my daughter and I. Kelcie, she transitioned out of her Fortune 500, very stressful job in a company that was known for layoffs every 4 to 5 years. Just like a lot of women that work, sometimes we have to make sacrifices. We want to stay home with our children. We need to have an income. Not always, but sometimes. I mean, if we're fortunate enough to be in a relationship where we have someone that's supporting us or we have another source of income that supports us. But again, you have to ask yourself, you have to be real. What if that income source went away? What would you do then? And how would you support yourself? So one of the things that we talk about is that you don't have to have it all figured out today. You don't even have to have it all figured out tomorrow. So you might be a working professional right now and maybe you have that high stress job. So you have a solid income, but it's the only one. And that's what keeps you up at night, is that what happens if you should lose that job? What would you do? You might be the pre-retirement planner. So we have a lot of women that come into our program that, their kids are grown. They're in different stages of their life. And what they're finding out is that they don't have enough money. The amount that they thought was going to be there, or with the cost of living, it's not going to cut it anymore. They're coming in saying, how can I, transition into having a second source of income through real estate investing. And that's what we go over with them. And then you might be newly independent, maybe by choice, maybe not, and you're just saying, I want to have more, I want to be more, and I don't want to rely on this one source of income to take care of my bills and my lifestyle. Because isn't that really what we're talking about? Is our lifestyle. It's not, we always are going to have bills unless we're so wealthy, but it's really our lifestyle. And what kind of money do we need for our lifestyle? So that's what I want you to think about. So, does the one income that you have, the one income stream, does it support and will it support the type of lifestyle that you want, not only today, but tomorrow? That's what you have to ask yourself. From my point of view, having one income stream is the biggest risk that we can take because for our families, for ourselves, the risk is that here's a statistic: 64% of Americans fear a single income life. They don't want to be dependent on just one source of income. I think it's a very risky and scary thing to be dependent on just one source of income. So I think about, "Okay, what can I do?" And so real estate investing is that vehicle for me. The opportunity, women are becoming the fastest real estate investors in the US because they're waking up. They're saying, you know what? I can do this. I'm smart enough to do this. I know the resources. I can work with someone like Nancy and Kelcie. Yes. And women are waking up to saying, hey, I can do this. And this is something for me and the way I want my lifestyle to be. Third is you just have to take the step. You have to take the first step. So we have a lot of free resources. You can visit our page down below, check out some of the links here, and book a strategy call with me. And let's see how we can get you off the hamster wheel and into taking the action today for your future tomorrow.